Hey everyone, welcome to PhoneUX. On this video I'm reviewing the A54 and so let's take a look. So let's start with the pros here, the good stuff. The looks, definitely a plus on this phone. It looks very premium, it actually feels very premium. Even though the frame is plastic, it doesn't feel cheap. You don't have the feeling of when you touch metal where it's a little bit cooler to the touch. But besides that, it doesn't feel like it's actual plastic. It's very solid, and you can feel like you could grab it and nothing is not gonna move, it's not gonna crackle, it's not gonna do anything. It's gonna stay solid. Very proper feeling phone. The camera array looks very nice. The color options are pretty decent. Not too many options, but the colors are nice, and then you do get a nice looking finish on the frame itself. So yeah, as far as the looks, is definitely probably one of the better things about it. So let's talk about the positives of the functions on the phone. It's very ergonomic. It's very easy to reach the power button, the screen on button, and the volume down. If you have slightly larger or longer fingers, you can reach the volume up without having to readjust. But either way, it's not much of an adjustment. Button placement is very good on this phone. And then also, typing on the phone is very nice. I mean, for the first thing I do is I always switch to the Gboard keyboard. It is my favorite one to use. But it's very easy to type on it. The screen size makes for a very good typing experience, and then the haptic feedback is pretty good as well. So it's very easy to type. There's no delay. There's no stuttering that you will get on slightly lower budget phones. It's just a very good experience on the typing part, which is great for messaging, searching, all these different things that you would use it for. The next positive is the screen. So this phone actually has a very nice screen. I was surprised when I first turned it on. I was not expecting a nice screen. I was expecting maybe a decent screen, one that's just passable. But when I turned it on, it was definitely a nice screen. I would say it even competes with some of the S series or flagship level phones. The screen looks very nice. The colors are great on it. It has 120 hertz refresh rate, which leads to smoother scrolling. And then watching videos and movies on it is obviously going to be great because you have such good color on it, pretty decent brightness on it. It's just a great experience on the screen. It was a really surprisingly great screen. Now obviously, if you have a nice screen, you want to have good speakers, and the speakers are definitely acceptable. If you don't compare them to other phones, flagship phones, you won't notice that they're not as good. They're very clear. What they kind of lack is a little bit of depth, bass, and maybe some mids on it. It's a bit on the high end. But that's just because the speakers that are being used are going to be lower end, and then on the flagship phones. But that's not to say it's not a good experience. It's actually a very good experience. I've enjoyed watching videos on it quite a bit. I've watched some shows on it, and it's quite enjoyable. So you got the speaker on the top here, and then you have it on the bottom, and it comes out very even. You don't feel like it's coming heavier out of one than the other. And it's just going to be a very good experience when watching videos. So the next positive is going to be the battery life. So the battery itself is 5,000 milliamps, which is on the bigger side of pretty much any phone. And so that kind of leads to having good battery life, even though the chipset itself is not as efficient as a Snapdragon Gen 2. So it's not going to last as long as the S23 Ultra, but it does last a full day. It does waste a bit faster, especially if you're under heavier use, because the chipset is just using as much power as it can to get the job done. But either way, even with that, the battery life is solid, and I don't think anyone will be disappointed with it. So I use the battery protect feature, which limits the charging to 85%. And even with the 85%, I'm averaging probably over 4.5, probably 5 hours of screen on time by the end of the day, and I still have some battery left over. It's not like it's leaving the phone dead. I do have maybe under 20, but above 15% by the end of that usage. Obviously, that could depend on what you use, but for watching videos and scrolling through the internet and social media, it's gonna last you a pretty good amount of time. And last on my list of pros is actually another surprising feature, and that is the camera. So the camera is a 50 megapixel main camera and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide with a 5 megapixel macro. The macro, it's not all that useful. You could almost get the same result by just zooming in as much as possible using the main camera sensor. So not necessarily the most useful, but I guess it does make the design look more like the flagship the S series. But the 50 megapixel actually pushes out some pretty nice pictures. It's I think as long as you're not comparing it side by side, you'll be happy with the results. I wouldn't go putting it into competitions, but for social media and things like that, it's definitely gonna be more than good enough for that. The colors are nice. It's pretty clear. I think the biggest comparison that I did was actually with the Pixel 7. Having the Pixel 7, I believe it has either 48 or 50 megapixels. I think it was a 50 megapixel sensor on it. And it goes to show just not all 50 megapixels are equal. This 50 megapixel on the A54 it didn't provide as much detail as the Pixel 7. But obviously the Pixel 7 is considered one of the best point and shoot cameras on a phone, so it's kind of hard to compare on that one. Compare it to any other mid-range phone, and this is gonna put up a good fight. Probably even some of the lower flagship phones might have some close comparisons. Ultra wide actually has good colors as well, and has some good outcomes. And just overall camera experience is good. It would have been nice to have a telephoto lens on it, but I mean at $450, I'm not surprised that they don't have a telephoto. They're trying to cut costs wherever they can to get at that price range. So overall, camera good. So with that said, there are also cons to this, and I'm gonna start with the camera app. So the camera app obviously is gonna have less features, but I found one that was a little bit odd. So the ultra wide, when we're taking a picture with ultra wide, you're stuck at that 0.5 or 0.5x zoom range. You can't do any in between 0.5 and 1. So that was a bit odd. Not really gonna affect much. You could just literally take a picture with a 0.5 and crop it in later, and you're gonna have pretty much the same result. But I just found it a little bit odd. You don't have that smooth transition from 1 to 0.5 or 0.5 to 1. Like you would get on the flagship phones. That's probably the main thing about the camera app. Obviously it doesn't have the expert raw, at least that I saw but it does have pro, which is like more than good enough for this phone. It has the standard 12 megapixel mode, and it has a 50 megapixel mode. I took a picture, pretty much the same picture, back to back, one at 12 and one at 50. I didn't notice any difference on the 50. I didn't see any extra color. I didn't see any extra detail. I cropped in and it looked the same. The only difference is that it took a little bit longer to take. So I don't see a reason for having that 50 megapixel mode other than just saying you have it. I would just stick to the 12 megapixel on this one. But besides that, the camera app works the same as others. Well, actually, there was one more. The delay is definitely noticeable on this series of phone, on the A54. So I hear a lot about people complaining about the delay on the S series phones, including the S23 Ultra. And yeah, and I would notice it's just not as fast as some other phones. If that was problematic, then this is gonna definitely be problematic. It's a noticeable delay. And I think it's because it has the same type of behavior where it tries to get in focus before it takes a picture, except that with a weaker chip, it takes a little bit longer to get in focus and get the right lighting and everything. So you do notice the delay on this, definitely. For any action shots, you're gonna want to use that burst mode to get a decent photo. But again, it's more about learning how to use the tools you have than just trying to grab the best tools that are out there. So that's it with the camera app. Let's move on to the next con. So this next one is probably not going to be a big deal for most, but for me, I feel like the transition from the plastic frame to the glass is a bit sharp, so it could be a little bit uncomfortable after using it for a bit. It didn't always bother, depending on, really, I guess it depends on how I was holding it, what task I was doing. But holding it in your hand like this will put some pressure. I think a smoother transition would have been nice. Probably would have cost a little bit extra though, so that's probably why they didn't do that. But a smoother transition on at least on the back end. The front end doesn't really matter as much, but at least on the back end will give a more comfortable experience. But besides that, I don't think it's a deal breaker. Just something to note. It's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. So this next one is actually the most important downside to the phone, or negative on the phone, and that is just the performance of it. So I'd never feel like it's struggling when something's already open, but it takes a little bit to get started. I kind of feel like it's like a steam engine kind of thing, where it takes a little bit to get going, but once it gets going, it's good. So the main thing that I noticed, or the main time that I noticed it, is actually when I open the phone and unlock it. So I'll just go through it real quick. So I'm gonna open it real quick and unlocking it here, and there's a delay, and you can actually see a little bit of a stutter when I do that. It might not be too noticeable on camera, but seeing it in person, you can see that the transition is not too smooth or as smooth. And if anything happens while you're unlocking, like let's say you get a new message on text message or a notification while you're unlocking, you'll definitely see that it stutters as it brings in the notification first and then unlocks. It can't really handle both at the same time. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then it just almost on every app that you open, it does have a little bit of a delay. It's not the smoothest. So now it's making it look a little bit bad, but not the smoothest. And then camera app is definitely another one where you notice it. So it has its delays, and if you were to compare it to a flagship phone, it's definitely going to be noticeable. Using it every day, I've been using this for about 2 weeks already. Using it every day, it hasn't really bothered me. Yeah, I noticed it, but it's not enough to really ruin the experience of the phone. I've actually still enjoyed the experience of the phone even with this lag, but it is there, and if that bothers you, definitely keep that in mind. It is going to be present, and it is gonna be present in just about every action you do. So it could be because of the chip performance that I just mentioned, where it's a bit sluggish, but I did experience some slowness when streaming live TV. It wasn't too big a deal, but it was noticeable, but I don't notice it every time. So I don't know, maybe if something's happening in the background, maybe if I have too many apps open, the live streaming takes a bit of a hit. But it was a little bit choppy, and it was noticeable, but I was able to watch the show without any issues. But when it works perfectly, and then obviously you get a nice picture with it. Haven't noticed it with Netflix yet, so streaming services in general is not really an issue. It's live TV streaming that I've noticed the issue, and that does chug more power. I'm not sure exactly why, but yeah, it does chug more power on the processor to stream live TV rather than a streaming service, and so that can be a bit of an issue. Although a phone's not really the place to be watching live TV. It's more of just when you're bored somewhere and you don't have access to a TV. So my final thoughts on the phone: it's a mixed bag. All right, it's good, it's got its bad, but overall I actually enjoyed the experience with it. For $450, I was actually pleasantly surprised, and I wouldn't be upset if this was my daily phone. The lag was the biggest thing, and like I said, it didn't really mess with my experience too much. It's something you just got used to. It's just you hold it a bit longer, let it do its little lagging, and it's gonna run perfectly fine as soon as it opens. So that's not too big of a deal, and that was the biggest downside. I was definitely pleasantly surprised with the camera and with the screen on it, which is probably the most important thing, for at least for me, on a phone. and that gives me that kind of changes my perspective on it, and I would say I will consider this a pretty decent phone. There are better options out there, like the Pixel 7, for example, is gonna have the screen actually is not really any nicer on the Pixel 7. I probably prefer this screen a bit more actually than the Pixel 7, but obviously with the Pixel 7 you get a little bit more power, it's gonna be a little bit smoother, and you're gonna have better pictures, and you could possibly get that for the same price, around the same price range. But if you're comparing MSRP to MSRP, this is 150 bucks cheaper, and I think it competes pretty well in this price range. I've seen a lot of videos where people kind of making it seem like it's a great phone and you wouldn't even notice any of the performance and things like that. It's definitely gonna be noticed. So I wouldn't buy this phone with rose colored glasses, because it's gonna quickly fade away as soon as you buy and start using it. But it's actually a decent phone with a pretty good experience, and honestly I like One UI, so this is running the full One UI. So really it's up to you depending on preferences, but there are better options out there, but this is not a bad option. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video helpful. If you enjoyed it, please click on the like and subscribe button, and click on the notification bell so you know when I upload new content. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.